What's a hero or villain without a helping hand? Or a helping wing, a helping tail, a helping hoof? Yeah, you get the idea. Today we're looking at every Disney sidekick and ranking them from good to evil. And not just the heroes' sidekicks, but the villains' sidekicks too. We'll begin with the characters who, although they're aligned with the good guys, have enough issues to make them a little bit morally questionable. We'll call them the flawed friends. For the least good Disney sidekick, we have to go with Runt from Chicken Little. This very ironically named pig is one of Chicken Little's best friends, and to his credit, he's usually a pleasant guy. Despite being cowardly, he does what he needs to in order to help and support Chicken Little, including being one of the literal 3 people in town who doesn't treat him like a complete outcast after a simple mistake. All that's well and good, and it'd be great if we could stop there. But then there's the end of the movie, when Foxy Loxy has her brain scrambled by the aliens. Their leader assures the people of Okie Oaks that they can put her back to normal, to which Runt urges them not to, saying she's now perfect.
Lollipop! Lollipop!
I get that Foxy was a bully and all, but a kid being mean is hardly justification for them being lobotomized and never able to return to who they once were. Soaring into the next spot, we have Archimedes from Sword in the Stone. Far from the only wisecracking bird on Disney's film record, Archimedes is a pompous grouch who's more interested in pointing out his owner's flaws than actually helping him on his journey.
Certainly a great deal better than you do.
He's loyal, sure, and he does actually come in handy sometimes, like when he helped to rescue Arthur from being eaten when he was turned into a fish. But he's low on our list not for any malice he possesses, but more so for a lack of any superheroic attributes. From one bird to another, next up we have Wilbur from The Rescuers Down Under. To his credit, he's not a helping hand on lobotomies or anything, not on screen at least, and he actually has a lot of good attributes. Despite initially refusing to give the main duo a ride in the snowstorm, which is understandable honestly, he changed his tune immediately upon hearing that there was a kidnapped child at stake.
Nobody's gonna take a kid's freedom away while I'm around, nobody!
That shows that Wilbur has some good values and will do his part to protect the innocent, but this is unfortunately paired with a serious attitude problem. Wilbur constantly places himself on a high horse, like when he refused to heed Jake's warning that he was coming in too fast to land safely. He can also be pretty hesitant to help out, like when he had to be badgered into keeping Marihute's eggs warm until the rescuers could return. He's a good guy, but he has some ego problems in need of adjustment, which I'm sure him being forced into a parenting role against his will is gonna help him with. Man, poor dude. Next up, we've got a classic double redemption arc on our hands. Tong and Noi from Raya and the Last Dragon are up next. These two were in very different living situations before meeting Raya. Tong and Noi respectively spent most of their lives as ruthless warlord and notorious burglar disguised as innocent baby, respectively. Once they became Raya's new teammates though, they cleaned up their acts and ultimately became much better people, even forming an admittedly adorable father-daughter bond with each other. Almost makes us forget that Tong has proudly crushed mountains worth of skulls in his lifetime. Almost. This is one of the more unconventional picks on our list, but we feel like Fagin from Oliver and Company deserves a mention. Based on the character from Oliver Twist, Fagin is a much more pleasant take on the character. Rather than being a child-exploiting scumbag, Fagin here is a down-on-his-luck homeless man who uses his beloved pet dogs as assistants in repaying his debts to Bill Sykes, who, in his defense, is a genuinely terrifying guy. Fagin's worst deeds really come down to just how far he's willing to go to get out of his debt, most notably holding Oliver for ransom against his new wealthy owners, but when he discovers that said owner is a little girl, he immediately relents and even helps to rescue her when she's kidnapped by Bill Sykes. He's a genuinely good man, just one who's stuck in a pretty rough situation right now. Right after him, from the same movie, we have Dodger. He doesn't have the most flattering introduction of the day, since he starts out by tricking Oliver into helping him steal a bunch of food from a hot dog stand, only to take it all for himself, and proceeds to sing a song about how much better and smarter he is. It's still, like Fagin, he's not a bad guy by any means, just a dog who's in a rough position due to poverty, and does his best to provide for himself and his family through whatever means necessary. He also does ultimately accept Oliver as a member of the pack, and once they part ways, as a genuine friend. I can't help but wonder if things might have gone a bit more smoothly for this ragtag group if they recruited Abu from Aladdin. It might seem harsh to place this little guy so low, but Abu has more than his fair share of selfish traits. I mean, granted, he is a monkey who's been presumably raised as Aladdin's thieving companion. To his little mind, when he helps Aladdin trick people or steal food, he's just doing what he needs to in order to survive. Still, even when his life isn't on the line, Abu lets his kleptomania academia take over a lot, to the point where he touches a gem and nearly gets himself and Aladdin killed in the Cave of Wonders. We're giving Abu the Greed Sinner Medal for his habitual theft, but we're not going to act like that makes him pure evil. He sometimes uses his craftiness for good, like helping Aladdin save Jasmine from an angry street merchant. Even if he's greedy and unlikely to stick his neck out unless he absolutely has to, you can count on Abu when times are tough, even if he's a little scamp most of the time. As long as we're talking about the more mischievous characters, we have to give Mushu the next spot. Mushu is relatively low on the list on account of him being a bit of a schemer. He tricks the other Guardians into thinking he's the stone dragon tasked with going after Mulan and bringing her back, only to end up helping her in order to prove himself to his former bosses. His whole adventure with Mulan starts out with a lie, and he's technically using her as a means of getting his old job back. Over the course of the movie, though, we see Mushu grow into a better person, dragon, and genuine friend to Mulan. He had to be held back by Cricky when Shang got up in her face, and always stuck by her no matter what, even when things got rough. In the end, Mushu finally got his status as a Guardian back after proving himself to be a pretty darn good one. And while it doesn't erase his selfish side, it shows that he's a good guy who's earned his role as a valiant Guardian spirit. Up next, we have Hercules' lifelong loyal steed, Pegasus. This winged steed is fiercely protective of Hercules and can quickly become vengeful with his opponents, or even his potential opponents. He's particularly hostile with Meg, with whom his issues appear to stem not from the fact that Meg poses a threat to Hercules, being an accomplice of Hades, but just because he's jealous of the love-struck attention Hercules is giving her. He shoots her some really angry glares throughout the story, takes advantage of her fear of heights by flying at purposely high speed so as to frighten her, and seemed to enjoy any time she got hurt. As a god's best friend, Pegasus has a good heart too, just one that's full of jealousy towards whomever's getting more of his bestie's attention. Now, let's move on to the characters who are more cut and dry good guys. These are the small-scale sidekicks, the ones who helped their heroes out, but having some of the less remarkable feats or motives to go with their altruism. Nico and Flit are basically the definition of sidekicks who fit in this category. They're among the animal buddies who don't have magical speaking capabilities, but make up for it with their loyalty and companionship with Pocahontas. Unfortunately, it's that very loyalty that causes them to butt heads over whether Pocahontas should be with John or Kokum, and that, paired with their lack of any particularly impressive heroic feats, is why we won't place them any higher. Disney's most well-intentioned source of misinformation, Scuttle from The Little Mermaid, is next. Think of him like Ariel's equivalent to Owl from Winnie the Pooh. This guy loves to hear himself talk, even if it's about human culture and gadgets he knows basically nothing about.
Human stuff, huh? Hey, let me see.
Does this technically make him a pathological liar? Well, maybe, but it always seems like Scuttle is convinced he does know about this stuff. He can even be quite clever at times, shown by him being the one who realized Vanessa was actually Ursula in disguise. He's not the best guy to go to for practical advice, but if you need a friend who will give you all he's got, Scuttle fits the bill. Tuk Tuk from Raya and the Last Dragon is the next noble steed on our list. Not much needs to be said about this little guy turned big guy. Tuk Tuk doesn't have any deep personal convictions nor a complex character arc or anything. He's just a pet who's kept fed by Raya and resultantly does his best to help protect and transport her however he can. From one steed to another, next up is Maximus from Tangled. One of the most stubborn sidekicks on our list, Maximus isn't the type who will let you in right away. This is understandable since, as you may have noticed, he is a horse, but while he's not the most open, Maximus is pretty sharp, and he shows no issue with helping his former nemesis Flynn to reunite Rapunzel with her family. You know, her real family. He also pushes Flynn to rescue Rapunzel in the final act, showing that his morals can outdo even those of Ryder at times. Flynn Ryder. Similarly, albeit slightly more friendly, is Sven, Kristoff's reindeer best friend, is more like an oversized puppy than the usual reindeer fare. He even doubles as a wingman, sensing that his owner has feelings for Anna and even helping save her life when the storm gets particularly rough. He's one of those characters who's really just kept from a higher spot by the fact that the other sidekicks are more heroic, or in the case of Thumper, they're even more innocent. Come on, you can't get much more pure than an adorable baby bunny, right? He's less of a sidekick and more of a friend, and you won't really catch him helping to save the world or anything. Nonetheless, if you need a friend to talk to or help you learn how to ice skate, Thumper's your guy. Hey from Moana is relatively low on our list. How do I put this? Well, he's stupid, like really stupid, and also really lucky since in both movies he's constantly cheating death without even trying. A complete lack of brain cells means this boat snack gets the Darwin Sinner Medal, but that hasn't stopped us from absolutely loving him, even if he doesn't really do much, or anything really, to help Moana on her adventure. He's also harmless any way you slice it. Just keep Hey away from Maui when he's hungry, please.
Boat snack!
From one master of land and sea to another. Next up is Fish Out of Water from Chicken Little. Fish is a double-edged sword as a sidekick. On one hand, he's a loyal and supportive friend to Chicken Little and the gang, being one of a few characters in town to not relentlessly bully him over the acorn incident. On the other, though, he's also very easily distracted, often more focused on screwing around than whatever the gang is currently up to, which might even result in him getting abducted by aliens every so often. He's a good friend, and he does indirectly help expose the alien threat that Chicken Little was right about all along, but there are other good guys that did more overtly impressive deeds. Little John is one of the more chaotic good cast members on today's list, but don't let that fool you. This guy simultaneously acts as Robin Hood's right-hand man and his voice of reason. He takes the danger of their adventures more seriously than Robin and is a bit more risk-averse compared to his buddy. While that's totally understandable, it's worth mentioning that while Robin is more risky than Little John, that also means that he's more readily able to help the poor. Still, Little John is a good guy who cares about his community and always supports his best friend. That said, do not cross him unless you want him to lead a spontaneous diss track against you. Prince John truly was not like us. Up next, a quick mention of the mice from Cinderella is in order. Jack and Gus Gus might seem like your typical Jerry Mouse knockoffs at first, and this is kinda true since they're constantly fighting for their lives against Lady Tremaine's fittingly named pet cat Lucifer. Given what they deal with daily, these two are pretty darn courageous, especially Jack, who willingly fought off Lucifer to try and save Gus Gus. When Cinderella rescued him, Gus Gus proved his own worth by helping to make her dress for the ball, showcasing a pretty decent sense of honor on both Rodin's parts. Rapunzel's friend slash dress-up doll, Pascal, is next. He was a friend to Rapunzel when she didn't have anyone else she could confide in. He encouraged her to leave the tower before Flynn showed up and tried his best to keep Rapunzel from being imprisoned again, even though all it got him was kicked into a wall. When Pascal was given the opportunity to be sure that Gothel would no longer be a threat, he took it, leading him to tripping up the witch and having her fall to her death. Man, wait, it just hit me that Pascal straight up killed the villain of the movie. Good for him! With the category called small-scale sidekicks, where else could we put Cricky? Sure, it's up for debate whether or not Cricky is actually a good luck charm, but lucky or not, he has another L word on his side: loyalty. This bug will stick by your side no matter what, and he gets extra points for that considering the fact that he's a cricket, so basically any danger could become deadly for him quite easily. His worst trait is his tendency to bicker with Mushu, but come on, it's Mushu. He's not exactly the most cooperative dude in the discussion today, though calling him a loser was maybe a bit too far, Cricky. It doesn't bug us to follow up one insect with another. Next up is Evan Rood from The Rescuers. Now, this is a guy who's dedicated to his job. Despite being exhausted for the vast majority of the movie, nothing ever stops Evan Rood from being as helpful as possible to the people who need him, leading the charge to rescue Penny and rallying the other swamp creatures to do the same. It's already impressive to be willing to help save a kid, but to do so when you're an insect and a piece of paper could crush you, that's courage right there. She had a bit of a rough ride in terms of morals, but Tinkerbell came out of her adventure with more good traits than bad. Sure, she's incredibly jealous of whomever gets more of Peter's attention than she does, even going as far as to try and get Wendy killed for the crime of existing, I guess. That's worthy of the Envy Sinner medal, to be sure, but she redeems herself by the end of the movie. After being tricked into giving away the Lost Boys' hiding place to Captain Hook, Tinkerbell overhears his plan and escapes captivity to rescue them, even willing to risk being blown up to save Peter and the gang. It's quite the redemption, one that gives even Gurgi a run for his money. At first, he definitely seems like a guy worthy of a spot on the lower half of the list. If you happen to have munchings and crunchings on you, he'll try and con you out of them, a crime for which we'll award him the Gluttony Sinner medal. We'd also point out that Gurgi's kind of portrayed as a coward for not wanting to help rescue Hen Wen from the Horned King's castle.
Oh, no, it's a terrible place.
But, like, look at this place, man. Why would he want to risk facing that for a kid he barely knows? Despite his initial selfishness, Gurgi proves himself to be a true hero in the end. Like Tink, he was willing to die if it meant protecting his friends, but unlike her, he actually does die temporarily, only revived by the witches of Morva. Greater love has no one than this, that he might die for his friends. This dude's even a hero by biblical standards, so we had to give him a pretty high spot on our list. Next up, we have Vanellope von Schweetz, the original princess of Sugar Rush. That was until King Candy did his thing and kept her royalty under wraps. Vanellope isn't introduced as the most pleasant character around. For a girl who wears candy all over her outfit, she's not exactly sweet at first.
I don't know, why are you so freakishly annoying?
But you've got to remember that she was bullied by her whole community for the entirety of her life that she could remember. When she finally becomes friends with Ralph, she slowly but surely becomes a happier, kinder person, coming out of her shell and becoming the sweetheart that hardened exterior was hiding all along. Don't be afraid. Despite being a ghost, Zero is nothing to fear. He's not exactly a fighter, but Zero makes up for it by being a top-tier friend to Jack. Whenever Jack is sad, and alone, in despair, you get the idea. Zero is always there for his buddy, and with the help of his magical totally not copyright infringing glowing nose, he helps guide Jack through the fog to live his dreams. Zero is a man's best friend who takes his role seriously even in a supernatural setting, which earns him quite a few points. Now let's move on to the bigger and better heroes. Those previous guys were great, don't get me wrong, but the superior sidekicks are where it's at when it comes to heroics. Kicking off this category is Abby Mallard, Chicken Little's best friend and main support system. Out of all of his friends, she's the one who tries hardest to sincerely listen to his problems and give him advice, but most importantly, she'll stand by him even in the toughest of times. She helps Chicken Little and the gang return Kirby to his alien parents, and even helps him get closure with Buck, which led the latter to finally apologizing, realizing how crummy of a dad he'd been throughout the movie. Without Abby, Chicken Little would have been even more miserable, so we have to give her some credit for being one of the best friends on our list. Next up, we have the legendary Carl from Meet the Robinsons. This robot is more than just a hired hand. He's a true friend, trustworthy enough for Wilbur to confide in him about losing the time machine. Carl will try his darndest to keep his buddy on the right path, and when push comes to shove, he's loyal enough to stand by him no matter what path he chooses. In the end, he was one of the biggest helping hands to Lewis in defeating Doris and returning to his own time, only requesting a cooler redesign in the new future. Rhino is another one of the many ironically named Disney sidekicks. I'll let you figure out why. But despite a misleading moniker and a delusional outlook on life, Rhino is more than worthy of a decent spot on our list. He's the type of guy who will help his friends whether they want his help or not. Wise enough to know that when a guy like Bolt denies needing help, that's probably when they need it the most. From one animal pal to the next, let's go on down to the bayou to talk about Louie, the jazz-lovin' gator from The Princess and the Frog. Like Mushu and a lot of other sidekicks really, Louie initially helps the heroes for his own gain, wanting to be transformed into a human to play jazz with a big band. Now, well, he does achieve half of that goal, and it's the important half. But on top of being the pioneer for jazz-playing reptiles everywhere, he's also a pretty good friend. Despite his fear, he's always willing to fight for his friends at the end of the day, and he's also quite sensitive, offering Raymond comfort and a chance to see his friends one last time in his final moments. This big guy has a big heart to match. He may not be as big, but Hercules' mentor, Philoctetes, deserves a pretty respectable spot. He had his dreams shattered when even his finest trainees failed to live up to the hype. It wasn't until Hercules sought him out that he had another chance at greatness. Now, we have to mention that Phil's primary motivation is being admired for his work as a teacher, which is a motive that earns him the Pride Center Medal, but that doesn't mean he's a bad guy. Quite the opposite, because his training of Hercules results in him saving the world from Hades' evil plan.
That's Phil's boy!
Over time, he becomes a sort of uncle figure to Herc, comforting him when he's scorned for his excessive strength and doing his best to encourage him even when times are tough. Phil is a great guy and is absolutely worthy of having the Honorable Danny DeVito as his voice actor, but as great as he is, the remaining heroes go even further. Next is Roquefort from the Aristocats. Sure, he may not have been an official sidekick, but he was loyal to Duchess and her kittens. After finding out they were missing, he immediately went out to go looking for them, and when he found out the butler wanted them dead, he tried warning them to stay away.
Look out for them!
When they were trapped again, Roquefort didn't hesitate to run for help. Man, Disney really likes making its mice truly upstanding citizens, don't they? I'm starting to wonder if they're biased or something. Oh, no, but I just remembered Ratigan. Oh, well, let's move on to Zazu, the bird who just can't wait for Simba to grow up so he can become a proper king. As the king's royal advisor, Zazu was dealing with a lot of stress 24/7, from a traitorous brother to an irresponsible son. Mufasa's family wasn't easy to manage, but Zazu did his best, enduring a lot of hardships to keep Simba safe and Mufasa informed about the goings-on of his kingdom. He was also the first to accept Simba back into the kingdom with open wings, showing him the respect he deserved and knowing that Simba wouldn't have killed Mufasa. You could argue that Zazu could have done more, being the only one who really knew about Scar's evil before he became king, but I say he couldn't have done much else that wouldn't have resulted in him being eaten.
Impeccable timing, Your Majesty.
Up next, we've got Turk and Tantor from Tarzan. These two are Tarzan's best animal buddies, wanting nothing more than for him to stay away from humans and keep living his best life with the animals. Despite their hesitance, though, they do actually support him when they realize that becoming close to humans is what he really wants, and when he's in trouble, they don't hesitate to help him out. Having Stitch so high up on our list is sure to be controversial. Actually, it might not be. Come on, everyone loves Stitch. But he was literally created to cause chaos throughout the galaxy, and when he lands on Earth, you can tell pretty quickly. But Stitch is beloved by fans everywhere for a reason, and that's all thanks to his friendship with Lilo, who taught him how to love and care about others. This little alien literally overcame his own biology to become a better pet and friend, and when he starts glitching out in the sequel, he resorts to flying away in a spaceship ship to keep himself from hurting anyone, temporarily dying in the process. The dude would rather die than hurt anyone, and that's worth a pretty high spot in our book. From outer space to under the sea. Next we have Sebastian and Flounder from The Little Mermaid. We're placing them together because they're very much connected with Ariel, although in very different ways. Flounder is her closest friend, tagging along on her adventures despite his reservations, and when push comes to shove, he's more than willing to throw hands, fins, to protect her from threats. Then there's Sebastian, the king's royal advisor. This crab may seem like a claw in the mud, but he's far more defined by his compassion than anything else. Despite knowing how much he'd get chewed out for it, he ultimately relents in letting Ariel pursue her dream of marrying Prince Eric instead of telling the king.
The Sea King will never know.
As strict as he is, Sebastian is the definition of tough love, and true to his species, that hard shell hides a total softy of a man. Tell everybody we're on our way to talk about Coda next. We first meet this bold little bear cub when Kenai gets caught in one of his traps, letting him go on the condition that he'd help him get back home. Coda's a sweet kid, even if he's a bit mischievous. He's beloved by his fellow bears and gets along easily with others, as shown by how quickly his brotherly bond with Kenai is forged. Even after being told that Kenai was the one who accidentally killed his own mother, Coda ultimately forgives him, and the two are brothers for life, which shows a surprising amount of emotional maturity for a kid who's probably like 8, maybe? Following Coda, we have Trusty and Jock from Lady and the Tramp. As Lady's dear neighbors, they were a steadfast support throughout the movie. Not only did they teach Lady about the world, but they were always there to support her when she was having trouble. They offered her to live with them, thinking she was being neglected, and they stepped in to save Tramp when they heard he kept the rat from reaching the baby. These two are some truly upstanding canines. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's give a hand for the great Timothy Mouse. Dumbo was one of those films that was darker than we remembered, and no, it's not just the blackface crows. Poor Dumbo went through it as a kid, so thank goodness for this little mouse. It was Timothy that helped Dumbo get food and stay clean, his thinking that got him to land a key role in a performance, and his compassion that helped boost Dumbo's confidence, calling his ears cute and eventually encouraging the elephant to fly.
Dumbo, you're a climax.
He even made sure Dumbo could visit his mother even if she couldn't hold her son the way she wanted. This guy is a truly great character that deserves more praise. Now it's time to kick off our top 20. First up we have Nick Wilde. Nick was introduced as a con artist, and he's pretty darn good at what he does. He cheats people out of money on a regular basis with schemes that range from simple to downright convoluted.
It's called a hustle, sweetheart.
In his defense though, poor Nick is just acting in the way he thinks he has to. When he was just a kid, he was assaulted and bullied for being a predator, like the animal kind, something that he literally didn't have control over. As a result, he does whatever he can to get by, regardless of morality. It isn't until his friendship with Judy begins to blossom that he steadily becomes a better person. He uses his sharp skills to help save Zootopia from the night howler drug epidemic, helping save potentially countless predators from brainwashing and prey from straight up death. In the end, Nick becomes a police officer alongside Judy, showing that he does genuinely want to be a good person and help others, but only time will tell how he delivers on that, so we'll keep him here for now. Mrs. Potts, Lumiere, and Cogsworth are up next. Aside from having some incredible hospitality, these three are ride or die companions to the Beast. They act as wingmen and one wing woman to the Beast, helping Belle feel welcome and helping her hook up with the main monster himself. That's already pretty good, but they earn even more brownie points for the fact that they fight off Gaston's mob in the final act of the movie. A clock, a teapot, and a candelabra aren't exactly the most powerful combatants you could ask for, so we have to give them some serious credit for stepping up to the task anyway. From a trio to a duo, next we have Timon and Pumbaa from The Lion King. These two saved Simba from some presumptuous vultures, and despite the clear danger of befriending a mighty lion, they managed to take him under their wing and show him that life doesn't have to be full of worries. I mean, granted, Simba just witnessed his father dying in front of him, so don't worry about it isn't exactly the most sensitive kind of advice, but it did keep him from eating these two, and the pair lived happily together for years with Simba.
Repeat after me. Hakuna Matata.
Eventually, Timon and Pumbaa helped Simba return to and reclaim his kingdom, taking some serious risks in the process. They might have mainly been doing it to keep from being eaten at first, but they still proved themselves to be good friends / adoptive parents at the end of the day, so we're gonna give them a good spot regardless. He may be one of the less verbal sidekicks, but the magic carpet's actions speak to his character more than words ever could. Even Aladdin himself acknowledged you can trust this little fabric-y friend with your life. As shy as it might be at times, the magic carpet is a loyal steed who's more than willing to put itself in harm's way to get Aladdin and company wherever they need to go. There's not much more to say about this guy, it's just one of the purest steeds in Disney's repertoire. Now let's talk about the first Disney sidekicks, the 7 dwarves who took Snow White into their home. Sure, they initially saw Snow White as more of a maid than anything else, but they steadily came to see her as part of their family, becoming protective of her almost as if she were an adoptive daughter of sorts. They're generous and caring, hesitant to leave her by herself in their home, and constantly warning her of the imminent danger she'd be in if the evil queen were to find her. When they mistakenly thought she was dead, they're immediately immediate reaction was to hunt the queen down and kill her. Sure, revenge is bad and all that, whatever, but dude, she's literally called the evil queen. I'm not gonna take points off for trying to take her out. All right, I promise this is the last Umbrella entry. Victor, Hugo, and Laverne were the closest thing Quasi had to friends before he met Esmeralda, and even then, it's up for debate whether they were actually sentient or not. But whether they're real or figments of Quasimodo's imagination, they're always supportive of him, encouraging him to get out there and show the world how great he is on the inside. And when things don't work out, they're always there to comfort him through it. Up next, we have perhaps the most weirdly cast sidekick in Disney history, Valentino from Wish. Initially a regular baby goat who acted as Asha's beloved pet, Valentino was given a voice and a total comprehension of the English language when the pair met Star, giving even more personality to a goat who was already pretty willing to help out.
Careful, my mother was shaved for that yacht.
Valentino is standard fare for Disney sidekicks, so we don't have too much to say about the little guy. Just know that he's always ready to help in whatever capacity he's needed, and that there are a few more remarkable sidekicks who've earned higher spots. We won't talk about Bruno, no, today, but we will talk about Antonio Madrigal. Out of all of Mirabelle's family, this animal lover offers her the most help in her quest to save the family's magic. He's an introvert with a heart of gold. While he doesn't go out of his way to interact with others much, he's always happy to support his family, like when he offered Bruno a place to stay in his own room. Most importantly, he has a capybara friend, which makes him canonically the most powerful Disney sidekick in the studio's history, if you ask me. Next up, we have a real star, Raymond from The Princess and the Frog. A hopeful romantic, he was quick to step in to aid Tiana and Naveen without anything promised to him. He stayed to help Tiana despite her lashing out at him, and he even took on the shadows with only the small amount of light he could produce. Even while he was dying, he expressed concern for Tiana and Naveen, noting they were still frogs. When he learned of their love, he gave his blessing before passing on and reuniting with Evangeline in the sky. He had a bright light, but the one in his heart shines even brighter. Just don't go making goo-goo eyes at his woman. And landing just outside of the top 10, Baloo from The Jungle Book makes his grand debut. You might remember him as the absolute legend who taught Mowgli about the bare necessities of life, but this sloth bear has more to him than just his great singing voice and a love for relaxation. Even if we have to give him the sloth Sinner medal out of sheer respect, he doesn't hesitate to join Bagheera in escorting Mowgli, showing a willingness to risk his safety and his relaxation time for the sake of others who might need him. It honestly feels wrong to not place him any higher, but believe me, these final 10 have more than earned their positions. They are the top tier sidekicks. At number 10, we have Sisu, the titular last dragon from Raya and the Last Dragon. After her family lost their lives protecting the world from the Drun, Sisu was left dormant for 500 years, only revived when Raya summoned her to help break the curse and save her father. Sisu believes in the good of all creatures to the point where she can even be naive and get herself and others in trouble. But while that doesn't make her the most effective, it certainly makes her stand out as one of the most merciful characters on our list, especially considering how even Namari holding her at proverbial gunpoint wasn't enough for Sisu to stop believing in her, earning himself a much higher spot than he did last time. Next up is Dr. Dawson from The Great Mouse Detective. He may be less intelligent and daring than his eventual partner Basil, but that doesn't take away from how much of a stand-up guy Dawson is. When he notices a little girl crying, he doesn't hesitate for a moment to help her find her lost father, immediately accompanying her to Basil's home to get him on the case. He really goes hard for her, especially considering he doesn't even know this kid, and he constantly puts himself in harm's way for the sake of the case and saving her father's life. This guy's got a good head on his shoulders and a great conscience as well. Speaking of which, next up we have Jiminy Cricket from Pinocchio. If we had some kind of loyalty virtue medal or anything, Jiminy would be getting it without a doubt. He stuck by Pinocchio through being devoured by a whale, through being stolen by a puppeteer, through almost dying to save Geppetto. He did everything he could to get Pinocchio on the right path. Despite hardly ever being thanked for his efforts, Jiminy constantly put himself in harm's way and stayed by his boy's side. The relationship between cats and dogs in cartoons is a rocky one, but if Tibbs has anything to say about it, the dynamic definitely has its high points. This cat was easily the MVP of 101 Dalmatians. He risked his life saving the puppies, not just the ones being sought out by their folks either. This cat was willing to get in between the puppies and a grown man with a crowbar, willing to create a distraction so they could run, and willing to do all this and more to save innocent puppies from being harmed, which is pretty much the definition of pure good if you ask me. Landing just outside of our top 5 is Baymax. While he was literally built to do good, we aren't going to take much credit away from him for that. Baymax is devoted entirely to his protocol, whether it's caring for parents until they're fully satisfied or fending off attackers in battle mode. Baymax is a protector through and through, and he was willing to sacrifice his robotic life if that's what it took to save Hiro.
Are you satisfied with your care?
He's only kept from a higher spot by the fact that his good deeds are technically the work of Tadashi, his creator, when you really think about it. On the other hand, the top 5 are pure bona fide heroes, even bigger than Baymax, if you ask us. But your wish is our command, so let's kick off the top 5 with the legendary Genie from Aladdin. He's honestly above the title of sidekick, but we have to include him. There's nothing this larger-than-life spirit can't do. For For starters, he's an incredible entertainer, always goofing around, cracking jokes or impersonating, and spreading joy everywhere he goes. He's also the most optimistic character ever, even knowing that he'll likely be doomed to be imprisoned in the lamp for all of eternity. The guy never stops trying to keep morale up around him. Genie is also one of Aladdin's most loyal friends. Besides his constant practical jokes, he's always helpful, caring, and wise.
All joking aside, you really ought to be yourself.
Not to mention generous, which seems to be his middle name. Remember when he was willing to give up his freedom for Aladdin and Jasmine? That's because, to him, the most valuable thing in the world is a friend. Heck, he even had a whole song about it in the sequel. At number 4, we have Pacha from The Emperor's New Groove. This guy, man, this guy is nice. For starters, he has the patience of an absolute saint. Despite being told point blank that Cusco plans to run his whole village out of town so he can build a water park, Pacha is ultimately willing to help him get turned back into a human. Of course, not without blackmailing him into backing out of his plans.
Build your summer house somewhere else.
But we can hardly blame him for that, honestly. Pacha's doing the right thing by his family and his whole community, and all the while he's believing that even the biggest, most irredeemable jerk he's ever met has some good deep down. It's ironically this very faith in Cusco that leads him to becoming a better person, and his generosity doesn't stop there. In the sequel, Kronk's New Groove, Pacha and his family pose as Kronk's family to impress his old man, asking for basically nothing in return. Pacha is as good of a man to any given person in his community as he is to his own family, and that's the sign of a truly kind man in our book. Our former gold medalist of good is now taking home the bronze, but don't let that fool you. Olaf is still a gem who's earned all the warm hugs he can get. But first, this video is brought to you by Wicked Binge channel memberships. You can gain access to our videos early before anyone else, plus gain access to members-only emojis and loyalty badges by supporting the channel through a membership. We all know that line he gave Anna when pulling her towards the fire. Some people are worth melting for. He risked his existence to try and help this girl any way he could.
You're melting.
Some people are worth melting for.
In the original movie, when Anna's dying from the ice blast she got to the heart, he sets her up by the fire to keep her warm, even when it causes him to melt. The fact that the movie doesn't acknowledge this as the act of true love that Anna needs to be saved is probably the biggest plot hole that Frozen has. Like, the man was literally melting alive for his friend's sake. If that doesn't count as love, then I genuinely don't know what does.
Wow, you really don't know anything about love, do you?
What is love? He may be small, downright tiny even, but he's small in the biggest, helpful, best way. Piglet is Winnie the Pooh's best friend and a contender for the cutest sidekick in Disney history. No matter which of Pooh's adventures you're looking at, you can expect Piglet to be by his side through thick and thin. He built Eeyore's house and didn't even insist on taking credit. Saved Pooh's life when he was stuck in a log, and those are just a couple of random examples from Piglet's big movie, mind you. All of this is done despite him being underappreciated by his friends. Piglet never complains nor backs down from helping out, even though he's often downright terrified. He's a guy who genuinely loves his friends and delights in making people happy, making him one of the most pure and sweet characters in Disney history. He'd be a surefire choice for gold, but love it or hate it, there's no denying that Wish introduced a character who's basically the objective winner of this discussion. Star is a lot like Piglet, really. He's childlike, innocent, and adorable. He takes genuine pleasure in helping others more than anything else, and he has magical powers on top of that. It's Star's power that grants the wishes of the people, with Asha's wish being as pure and powerful as it was. Star straight up materialized in front of her. So we have a little ball of Kirby-shaped magic who chooses to grant wishes on the condition that they're made with good intentions and strong faith. Man, how do you even get more good than that? Star is implied to be responsible for all the positive magic in Disney history, from making Asha into a fairy godmother, and I mean a Cinderella one, not a Shrek 2 one, to granting countless other wishes throughout the Disney multiverse. Yeah, he's basically a benevolent, pure-hearted deity, and that's on top of having the personality of a happy little baby. There's no way we couldn't give the gold medal of good to this little guy, and okay, if you disagree, fine. You say no to that precious little face. Yeah, okay, that's what I thought.
Sadistic dictators, demonic tyrants, power-hungry sorcerers, and sea witches, gods of the underworld. Even they need friends, or more specifically, sidekicks.
Thirsty?
Today we're ranking every Disney villain sidekick from evil to most evil. As usual, we'll start off with the redeemed sidekicks, who either learned their lesson or never had much ill will to begin with.
From above, the wicked shall receive their just reward.
Oh yeah, it's all coming together.
Right off the bat, because our pick for the least evil Disney villain sidekick is undoubtedly Kronk. Let's be honest, did anyone not see this one coming? Kronk is probably one of the nicest characters in Disney history, let alone the nicest of the antagonists. Right off the bat, he's the whole reason Emperor Kuzco wasn't killed in the first act of the movie, since he refused to fully follow Yzma's plan for disposing of him, opting instead to let him escape.
Hope that doesn't come back to haunt me.
He has a good heart, and whenever he isn't following Yzma's orders, he proves himself to be a helpful and genuinely compassionate guy, something that's emphasized even further in the sequel, Kronk's New Groove. Here we see even more sides to Kronk, from him being a caring scout leader to a generous friend of senior citizens, even right down to him giving Yzma a second chance when she tricks him into thinking she'd turned over a new leaf. To be completely fair, Kronk did make some major mistakes, but he's also definitely done the most total good out of all the characters on our list, so we're giving him a big thumbs up alongside the gold medal of good. Taking a close runner-up position is Goob from Meet the Robinsons. Michael Yagubian. Truly a cautionary tale of why you should always be a considerate roommate. Keep your friends up too late just one too many times, and you might just end up ruining their life on accident, or rather, you'll cause them to lose a baseball game and resultantly decide to devote their entire life to ruining yours. These things just happen.
I don't care. I just want to ruin your life.
Poor Goob was a victim of circumstance, but thankfully his story didn't end there. He is a sidekick after all, and the bowler hat guy is the sidekick of the bowler hat itself, aka Doris. After Doris successfully manages to take over the world by manipulating Goob, the latter is absolutely horrified. This proves that he literally never wanted to hurt anyone, but just wanted to take Louis down a peg or two as payback. After Louis defeats Doris, the Robinsons invite Goob to join their family, only for him to decline it, showing a true sense of remorse and sadness for his crimes. Thankfully, like Kronk, he ultimately got a happy ending when Louis used his time travel to make sure he woke up in time to win the baseball game. He saved him from a lifetime of pain and misery. As long as Goob steers clear of bowler hats, he'll be just fine. Taking third place, we have Jumba and Pleakley from Lilo and Stitch. Really, all the antagonists from Lilo and Stitch could be argued as both sidekicks and as not really evil. The most notable ones, though, are the pair assigned to go to Earth to exterminate Stitch. Jumba, his creator, and Pleakley, the former Galactic Federation Earth expert. Ignoring the fact that these two really were just doing their jobs, all of their destructive tendencies and overzealous nature is made up for in the end when they decide to help rescue Stitch and Lilo.
He's very persuasive.
Persuasive?
Realizing Stitch had not only reformed, but had done so enough to make a friend. As a result, 2 more friends are added to that group, and any guy who's nice enough to dress up as Santa on Christmas can't be all that bad, right? Now, you can't judge a book by its cover. Enter Iago from Aladdin. You wouldn't expect a red parrot voiced by Gilbert Gottfried to be one of the most clever antagonists in Disney's repertoire, nor would you expect him to basically have an entire hidden redemption arc.
You know something? You're nothing without me. What?
But as it turns out, in the straight-to-DVD Return of Jafar sequel, Iago is more or less the main character, or at least the one who gets the most substantial arc. Okay, first things first, we're not gonna ignore everything Iago did throughout both movies. In the first one, he contributed to Jafar's plans quite generously.
Excellent work, Iago.
And only seemed to be opposed to the ones that endangered him or took advantage of him. That selfishness carries over to the second movie, where he's just as mean as ever, only teaming up with Aladdin to try and trick him into having a comfy home in the palace, and ultimately betraying him out of fear of Jafar. All of that is pretty bad, but after seeing how much Aladdin and Jasmine are willing to believe in him despite his mistakes, he feels genuine remorse. Without any overstated apologies, Iago ultimately turns on Jafar again to free Aladdin's friends from their shackles, allowing them to pursue Jafar on the magic carpet. And even after Aladdin assures Iago that he's done enough and all is forgiven, Iago still comes in at the very last second to fight Jafar and ultimately knock his lamp into the lava, assuring that he's hopefully gone for good. Iago might still be sarcastic, loud, and even a bit mean, but he's got one lesson learned that overrides all of that. He's a good friend. And okay, maybe he's a bit of a freeloader, but I'd say he's earned it this time. And closing out this first section, we have one of Cinderella's stepsisters, Anastasia. Like Lady Tremaine and Drizella, Anastasia spent the whole first movie verbally and sometimes physically abusing Cinderella, but she thankfully shares something in common with another Disney villain, Iago. And no, I'm not referring to the fabled Cinderella 4 where she's voiced by Gilbert Gottfried. Rather, I'm talking about the fact that these two both had some straight-to-DVD redemption arcs, with Anastasia learning to respect and care for Cinderella after the latter decides to hook her up with the man she'd fallen in love with. Sure, it took her a while to discover how awful her family really was, but sometimes people can be blinded to that kind of stuff. What matters is that Anastasia was able to overcome her upbringing and become a pretty decent person, all things considered. And that's enough to keep her out of neutral territory. This is the gray area. First up, we have the highly recommended Wiggins from Pocahontas. He's the right-hand man to Governor Ratcliffe, and for some inexplicable reason, he absolutely loves the guy.
I like you.
As a result, he never really has any reservations about following his boss's usually petty orders, nor unfortunately his orders to help the gang prepare for all-out assault on the native peoples. But with that being said, Wiggins isn't really malicious on his own, he just does his boss's bidding, and is genuinely disappointed in him when he's arrested for his crimes, showing that he definitely had his limits. A very secondary duo is up next. Trigger and Nutsy may be vultures, but they aren't out for death or anything. In fact, these two seem to be loyal to whomever's wearing the crown, making them the definition of just following orders. Of course, like Wiggins, those orders could come from bad people like Prince John, but it's not really Trigger and Nutsy's job to determine that. They're just simple henchmen doing their work, and they're every bit as loyal to King Richard in the end. And that said, basing your morality on that of whomever you work for makes you more of a lump of clay than a hero or villain, so we can't place these guys any higher nor lower. Next we have Sour Bill from Wreck-It Ralph. Interestingly enough, Bill here is really only on the list because he technically qualifies as a villain sidekick. He has no problems following King Candy's underhanded orders, despite not even seeming to like him all that much, which honestly really makes his morality hard to draw conclusions about. Like, he does do bad stuff, sure, but he's also not really doing it because of some underhanded motive or anything. Even after the king's defeat, he doesn't seem much more happy nor depressed, which means he might be less of a devious henchman and more of a grumpy NPC.
Not making the same mistake with you.
The Huntsman from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is up next. Mother Gothel would be proud of the queen for having such jealousy of her daughter that she'd willingly send an assassin to take her out. Thankfully though, despite having some concerningly easy access to the heart of a pig, the Huntsman turned out to be a pretty chill guy. It's definitely shady that he was willing to hunt her down in the first place, but while this is the bare minimum, at least he decided to warn Snow White of her jealous stepmother instead of going through with it. Next we have by far the most neutral character on our list, the Magic Mirror from Snow White. Come on, you ask a mirror an honest question and it gives you an honest answer. What's the sin here exactly? I mean, sure, it's kind of weird that this mirror's choice for the fairest of them all was some random teenage girl who was in the woods. Oh, okay, all right, maybe this guy's kind of weird. At least he's honest though, which is why you should be very glad he's in this movie and not in Shrek. As terrifying as she is in her context, Joanna from The Rescuers Down Under is a victim of circumstance. In other words, she's a pet who has a really mean owner, and since we don't get any anthropomorphic dialogue from her, we don't know a lot about what drives her. We do know some things though. She likes eggs, for instance, and she'll gladly screw around with McLeach's head trying to snack on some. She also has a penchant for hunting down whatever small animals her owner lets her go for. She's pretty ruthless, but she's also, well, an animal. She isn't trying to take over the world, nor even be excessively cruel or anything. She just wants to eat and to avoid as much of McLeach's abuse as she can. She spent way longer than would have been pleasant with him, but at least she didn't die with him, so hopefully Joanna is doing alright. If you're out there, Joanna, let us know you're okay. Oh, and like and subscribe. And for our last morally questionable sidekick, we have Smee from Peter Pan. He's the right-hand man to Hook, who we'd also argue is one of the less evil Disney villains out there. But whether you believe in Hook's status as a lost boy or not, he has one of the better relationships with his sidekick. Smee, for a pirate, is remarkably friendly and even polite in his own way. He'll defend Hook from crocs and octopi and generally doesn't do much aside from following his orders, which, to be fair, do still include hunting down children with intent to kill.
Carrying out your orders.
This is Neverland, so morals are way different here than they are elsewhere, but Smee still has just enough wiggle room to keep him firmly out of our good and bad categories. He's one of those sidekicks who really just exists to make sure his boss doesn't go too far off the rails, it seems. Oh, if only some other villains were so lucky. It's time to get to the meat and potatoes. These henchmen are the bad to evil. Soaring right on over to the bad guys, we have Hayabusa from Mulan. Even one of the most utterly irredeemable Disney villains out there can't help but have a soft spot for his pet. Shan Yu's falcon Hayabusa is primarily a spy who helps alert the Huns when there's a breach in their defenses by China or an opportunity to strike. Like Joanna, Hayabusa is an animal just doing what he's been trained to do, so we can't exactly call him a complete monster for that, even if he shows a little too much pleasure in his master's evil deeds. I mean, how else could you expect a bird to behave when his owner is Shan Yu? Next up we have Drizella from Cinderella. Unlike the other ugly stepsister, the money-hungry Drizella never really had a redemption arc to overcome her mother's hatred. Once Cinderella is out of the house, Drizella turns on Anastasia to keep up her pattern of cruelty, which leads to Anastasia gaining a conscience and ultimately to Drizella being reduced to working as a maid in Cinderella's home. Despite being one of the more polite villains on the list, Lawrence still has earned a pretty low place. In his defense, the guy has been pushed around his entire life, from his family to his boss to his non-existent wife. Everyone he's ever been involved with has basically just used him as a means to an end. And as it often goes, this has led to Lawrence wanting to put the shoe on the other foot, going from the guy who gets pushed around to the one who does the pushing. This makes him an easy target for Dr. Facilier, making him quick to accept a deal with him and more than willing to try and usurp Naveen by tricking Charlotte into marrying him.
I most definitely will marry you!
We can sympathize with a guy who just wants a better life for himself, but the thing about Lawrence is that he could have easily just tried to find another job. Instead, he was underhanded enough to cheat his way into royalty no matter who he had to step on to get there. So he's less of a pure evil guy and more of a guy who was just pushed past his limit. He just really should have channeled his frustration in a healthier way. Flotsam and Jetsam are a pair of few words and no words in the remake, but they make up for that with their actions. They never hesitate to follow Ursula's orders, whether it's as simple as spying on Ariel or as maniacal as tipping over the boat she's on to potentially drowning Prince Eric. There's no limit to the misdeeds these two will do. The only thing keeping them from an even lower spot though is the fact that they're two of the less intelligent henchmen on our list. If anything, it almost seems like Ursula is a motherly figure to the pair and she's genuinely heartbroken when she kills her babies. Mind you, that still wouldn't make Flotsam and Jetsam innocent by any means, but it would add another side to their villainy, since they'd really just be following the orders of the woman who's cared for them their whole lives. On a similar note, Diablo also falls into the category of devoted pets, but being both a pet and a familiar to Maleficent, we have to give Diablo some harsher judgment since he's more intelligent than the usual animal sidekick, not to mention the only one of Maleficent's henchmen who realized that Aurora wouldn't still be a baby after 16 years. If we had a brilliance center medal, it would obviously be going to Diablo, but all we have here is a low spot to reflect his willingness to hunt down and kidnap a teenage girl to appease his master's grudge. Now let's talk about two of the cruelest pets in Disney history, Roscoe and DeSoto from Oliver and Company. Usually with Disney villains as pets, they're either intelligent enough to interact with their foes like Iago or much more animalistic like Joanna. Roscoe and DeSoto kind of fit both categories, acting as Sykes' guard dogs who are more than willing to intimidate his debtors and their pets. To us, it might not seem like such a big deal, but these dogs are basically the animal equivalent of loan sharks, and while we're hesitant to call them outright evil, they certainly aren't good dogs either.
It's party time.
That said, they are still dogs, which means that they're counting on doing their master's bidding to get their next meal, and bad or not, they also didn't deserve to go out like that. Jeez, old Disney movies got dark. In classic old school Disney henchman fashion, Mr. Snoops from The Rescuers paddles his way into the next spot. He may have had a more ambiguous fate than his boss, but that doesn't mean that Snoops should have gotten away with his crimes. Even if he wasn't the head honcho he thought of himself as, he still very much wanted to be seen as an intimidating foe and was more than willing to kidnap and extort a child for the sake of getting that sweet moolah. On top of that, he's more level-headed than his boss, being less concerned with the devil's eye having some kind of supernatural powers and more concerned with how much he could resell it for on eBay.
Oh, they'll sell for a lot of cold cash.
That is to say that he's definitely one of the greedier sidekicks, to the point where he was willing to steal the gem from Madame Medusa after she proved her willingness to turn on him. And being more concerned with money than your own life is a surefire ticket to the greed center medal. No one's bad as Gaston. No one's rad as Gaston, and nobody is quite so down bad for Gaston as Le Faux. First things first, Lust Center Medal. Yeah, it's mostly a joke, but come on. Le Faux isn't even being paid to hang around Gaston like most villain sidekicks. He just really likes Gaston, and that liking towards him leads to absolutely no questioning his evil deeds. Whether it's getting Maurice falsely imprisoned in an asylum or attempting to kill the Beast and all his transformed servants, Le Faux was a ride or die for Gaston, no matter how much he got pushed around. Forget Belle, this is the real Stockholm Syndrome plot point of the movie, people. From one short sidekick to another. Next up is Creeper. Oh man, from the Black Cauldron. Creeper may not be blowing up people's houses, not on screen at least, but he more than makes up for it by serving as the Horned King's right-hand goblin, making him an assistant to the arguable most evil villain in Disney history.
Bring in the prisoner!
Creeper is primarily motivated by fear of his master and will do absolutely anything to make sure he faces as little of his abuse as possible. This includes all the basic stuff: torture, interrogation, murder, attempted murder, kidnapping, etc. While we can't blame him for being terrified of the Horned King to the point where even he was happy when the latter died, the fact that he was willing to serve such a demonic entity for seemingly no reason but protecting his own butt makes him one of the lowest villain sidekicks around. The only thing he could do to go even lower would be to slither on the ground, like Sir Hiss. Like a certain other royal advisor from Disney classics, Sir Hiss uses his position to his advantage as much as possible. With the power to hypnotize others and the ability to help Prince John plan out his schemes, he's a legitimate threat to the safety of the kingdom, and more specifically to their wallets. Like Creeper, he takes a lot lot of abuse from his boss, but unlike Creeper, he seems significantly less terrified of him, even acting somewhat condescending on occasion.
Of course you've been robbed.
The only reason he isn't even lower is the simple fact that he does have some limits to his depravity, more so than Prince John at least, as shown when he was horrified at the idea of having Friar Tuck executed just as a means of easily finding Robin Hood. Still, there are definitely worse things you could do for money. Just take it from Walter, Jesse, and Doug from Zootopia. Those names might sound familiar, especially for dangerous drug chefs, and that's because they're named after the iconic main trio of Breaking Bad, Walter, Jesse, and everyone's favorite Breaking Bad character, Doug. Like the main villain of the movie, these three are sheep who are willingly cooking up the Night Howler serum to use on predators so that they'd be overwhelmed by violent instincts. It's bad enough to come up with an idea as depraved as this.
Gosh, think of the headline.
Endangering countless lives for the sake of becoming a little more racist, but these three were willing to go along with it and to get their hands dirty in the process, which arguably makes them even more guilty. Up next, we have Fidget from The Great Mouse Detective. Anyone who'd willingly hang around a guy as twisted and psychotic as Ratigan is pretty questionable right off the bat, and being willing to kidnap children, assist in acts of political crime and mass terrorism only makes him even worse. Fidget is a handicapped bat, but that still doesn't stop him from doing some pretty heinous stuff for his boss, and to make matters worse, we don't really see much of his reason for working for Ratigan. Considering how Ratigan almost killed him on at least one occasion and actually killed him on another, I highly doubt loyalty has anything to do with it. Just barely missing out on the bottom 5 is Lucifer from Cinderella. It might seem bizarre to have a cat below so many other villains, especially considering the sheer gravity of those villains' crimes. What's more, on top of having a significantly shorter rap sheet, Lucifer here has the just a regular animal excuse. Even if he is a highly intelligent cat, he's still just a cat who's loyal to his master. So why is he ranked so low? One word: hatred. Sheer unbridled hatred. When Lucifer isn't lounging around mooching off of his master, and by the way, he deserves a sloth center medal for that, he's chasing the mice around the house and delighting in their terror. He does the same to Cinderella, messing up floors she just cleaned and doing whatever he can to make her day even worse. I guess Lady Tremaine's upbringing was at least partially to blame though, and I hope Lucifer appreciates that tiny bit of leeway because the bottom 5 won't be getting that much. While these two are far from the most competent henchmen, Pain and Panic have committed more than enough cruel acts to warrant a place in our bottom 5. Being a high-ranking servant of the underworld is already enough to make us count you as pretty darn evil. These two may not always succeed, but they always have the full intention to carry out Hades' whims.
Reporting for duty!
Whether it's the basic stuff like spying on people or terrorizing them, or something as downright pure evil as kidnapping an immortal baby and attempting to murder him, there's nothing these two won't do for their master. But to be fair, their master is the literal god of the underworld, Hades. That does make us see their crimes in a slightly less unforgivable light, since we really don't know what they'd do if they weren't under the constant threat of eternal torment, and they did seem relieved when they realized that Hades might not come out of the river Styx, but whether they act out of fear or not, they're willing to kill babies if it means saving their own skin, so I say placing them even this high is being pretty nice. At number 4, we have the Stabbington brothers from Tangled. Being betrayed by a former friend and coworker definitely has to sting, and you'd think that would at least place these two among the more sympathetic henchmen, but then you have to consider the lengths they went in order to get revenge on Flynn. Their primary motives are money and malice, which collectively earns them both the Wrath Center Medal, and leads to them committing egregious crimes like kidnapping, stalking, and even attempted murder. Not only were they totally cool with the idea of kidnapping a teenage girl, but they were willing to essentially use her as a fountain of youth vending machine, which is basically a less outwardly disgusting way of pimping her out. Betrayed or not, that's the kind of evil you just don't stoop to unless you're seriously twisted. Our former gold medalists of evil, the hyenas, are now demoted to bronze. But given how many baddies we've talked about today, that's still quite the feat. They may not be the brightest bulbs in the socket, but don't be fooled. If you step into hyena territory, you're fresh meat as far as they're concerned. These guys don't care about species, age, gender, etc. If you breathe, you're their feed.
Hey, did we order this dinner to go?
Apparently, even their own kind isn't immune to this either, since that Scar comic series confirmed that they'll occasionally eat one of their own kind if the need arises, all with a disturbingly nonchalant attitude about it, which earns them quite the easy Gluttony Cinder Medal. As terrible as this is though, you have to remember that they are just animals trying to survive, which explains why they gladly accept help from Scar to usurp Mufasa's throne, and likewise explains why Scar was their next meal after he disavowed their friendship by blaming all the carnage on them. They might be evil, but even these guys know about the importance of friendship. Our runner-up position goes to the final human characters on our list, Horace and Jasper from 101 Dalmatians. But first, this video is brought to you by Wicked Binge channel memberships. You can gain access to our videos early before anyone else, plus gain access to members-only emojis and loyalty badges by supporting the channel through a membership. Like many villains and henchmen alike, Horace and Jasper care about one thing and one thing only: money. But these two fall into that special category of greed, the one that makes characters like Mr. Krabs look like absolute saints in comparison. They're willing to do any amount of truly depraved things to make a quick buck, like kidnapping hundreds of puppies, skinning them, and ultimately plotting to kill them.
I'll pop them on the head. You do the skinning.
Other examples include, okay, I'm not sure if there are any, but do you need them? Like, they're literally murdering puppies, they're skinning the pets, they're eating the... Okay, I'll stop, but you get the idea. These two are absolute sociopaths with no low they won't sink to if it means making a quick buck, and unlike characters like Pain and Panic or the Hyenas, they aren't doing it out of necessity, they're doing it out of selfishness and sheer depravity, making them about as close to pure evil as you can get in a Disney movie. Or at least as close as a human can get. We're giving our gold medal of evil to Dr. Facilier's friends on the other side. Dr. Facilier wasn't born with his special brand of voodoo magic. He's had to borrow it from some friends on the other side.
He's got friends on the other side.
In other words, okay, these are basically voodoo demons from hell who are also loan sharks. They don't care what kind of horrific stuff Facilier does as long as he can ultimately pay them back, but even if he's flat broke, they're getting their payday anyway, as shown by his fate. In the end, Facilier is literally dragged into the pits of hell, screaming for his life, which showcases that these friends saw whatever incredible debt Facilier owed them and considered it equal with the opportunity to torment him for eternity. These guys are literally the embodiment of terror, selfishness, and sadism. And while this may be a hot take, I have a feeling they were never really Facilier's friends in the first place. But whether you agree with that or not, these fiends on the other side have earned their place on the other side of our ranking as the most evil sidekicks in Disney history.